Hello, I'm Yarlik, and this is the Alice perspective for the recent Happy Couple run that we did. If you haven't seen the original video, you might want to watch that first to give you some context. But what I'd like to do here is give you a more in-depth description of some of what's going on here. One of the things you'll notice is that we are using this technique called a Fanta, where we're actually swinging forward and getting knocked back by turning after the swing. We found recently that this actually adds a little bit more boost than even the usual knockbacks, and so we use that extensively throughout this run. Mostly up until we get dash. Once we get dash tends to be faster than the knockbacks. But early game, those knockbacks are still extremely useful. So here, Alice and Bob have been going through KP together, but now Alice is going to go off and head back to get Fury. So Fury of the Fallen is an important charm for pretty much any TAS because we almost always skip Vengeful Spirit. And in this particular case, Alice is able to get Fury in parallel with Bob walking to the bench. So it ends up saving quite a bit of time, and Alice is then able to quit out and continue from Dirtmouth. And so now Alice is going to be heading in and taking care of some stuff in Crossroads while Bob is headed into Green Path. Now, you might have noticed in speedruns that the knight does this weird little jumping thing through Dirtmouth. That happens because in Dirtmouth there's actually a slow down zone that causes your movement speed to be slower while you're walking. And so we jump through there to get through that. So we grab a little bit of Geo. We need some Geo for the Stag Station. In particular, we need to get both Crossroads Stag and Green Path Stag. And since we're skipping some of the normal Geo sources, it helps to get that little rock there. We will get some Geo from Aspen Arena as well. We're doing the double spike trick, very standard speedrunning trick. And we can get every piece of Geo there, no problem. And you can see we're still doing those Fantas. We have to do normal turnarounds against enemies, because Fantas only work against the walls. But yeah, nothing too crazy through here, just the usual TAS optimization. So Alice is going to go ahead and pick up the stag here. We're going to use the stag later when we come back to get the Crystal Peak. And we need to go to Crystal Peak both for C-Dash and also because there are several grubs there. So if you're not familiar with this run, the goal of Happy Couple is to effectively get Pure Nail. That's kind of the driving requirement. And in order to do that, you need to save 31 grubs, and you need to collect a lot of Geo. And you need to get all the other sources of Pale Ore as well. So we're going to do a quick fight here. Unfortunately, we were only able to get one damage tank on the way in, so we have to damage tank the rest of the way down. But it's still a pretty quick fight. Alice takes out the Gross Mother, no problem. She's going to do a cleanup here on the babies. This isn't a perfect cleanup, it's a 2-hit cleanup. There is possible to do a 1-hit cleanup, but I didn't optimize this quite so tightly. And now we get a nice quick shade creation. And so you might be wondering, okay, how are we going to get into Blue Lake when we don't have Dash or Claw? Well, thankfully, there is a trick called Itemless Blue Lake Shade Skip. It turns out you don't need Dash or Claw or Fireball to be able to get into Blue Lake. You just need to have a very precise setup for your shade. And if you watch closely, you can see exactly the setup. So, full jump, full, and then jump into, slash, pogo, pogo, over. It's actually a very consistent setup, and you can do it RTA, but it is quite precise. Now, thankfully, we do get dash soon, because otherwise getting across Blue Lake would take forever. Still takes forever, even with dash. Much nicer with the wall clank storage through here. So Alice's job, of course, here is to get D-Nail. And D-Nail takes a while. So while she's doing this, Bob is off. Just finished dash and is now heading towards Dash Master and Claw. Have to sit through the very long cutscenes. Yeah, these cutscenes, they seem long just watching it, but it's even worse when you're TASing, because at TASing, everything is going at much slower speed. So these sequences just take forever. This is a very long sequence too. We actually jump off the edge there to make it spawn faster. So technically that's a patch 1.2.2.1 thing. We're on a down-patched version of the game. But the seer spawns sooner on later patches anyways, so I figured it's reasonable to do that little fall off the edge trick to make the seer spawn sooner. Otherwise we just have to wait arbitrarily longer. So a nice simple movement through there. And then we're going to do Seer Skip, which I think I mentioned in the other video as well. But it's a little trick where you can get control by using the escape to get to the menu. And then you can dash out before the Seer starts talking to you. Saves a lot of time because the Seer is extremely talkative. And now Alice is going to head down to City. At this point, there's not a whole lot of interesting stuff going on since it's just dash movement. Every now and then we sneak in a nail hit to optimize some little detail, but for the most part, it's just a lot of dashing. So movement through here is a little bit interesting because we have some interactions with the enemies we can do. So you can do some dashes and pogos to get through. And I think we might have some down here as well. Yeah, so we can kind of pogo over those, dash over those. Depending on where the enemies end up, there's lots of little subtle things you can do with movement. So we are grabbing this bench. And this is primarily because we don't quite have Claw yet. And so if we went directly to the left, we wouldn't have Claw to get up. So instead, we're going to take a quick little detour and grab this grub. And now, because of how we timed things, we're actually going to have Dash Master, and so we can immediately equip it on the bench while we load in. So this saves a fair amount of time, because the overcharming can happen in parallel with the load-in time on the bench. We have to use that little pogo to get up there, because we don't have Claw yet. But we will have Claw pretty soon. Now at this point, we still don't quite have Claw, so we could have gone and done the Greater Husk Sentry that was guarding a grub. But rather than do that, we're going to do Gorgeous Husk. Now Gorgeous Husk is slightly faster than the Sentry, and you can see we did a little pogo chain over the enemies there. It's slightly faster, and we could use that Geo to get a nail upgrade, which is what we're going to do now. We get this nail upgrade early because we're going to have a couple of fights we need to do, and since we only have Fury, we don't have any spells yet. Having that nail upgrade is going to save us some time, especially because we're going to want it for the beginning of Kalos, because Kalos takes a very long time without any nail upgrades. So we're just going to head straight across here. We went through the fountain, and now we're going to go all the way across. Do a little bit of pogos and optimizations here. Dash Master movement is so fun. Only so much you can optimize there. So now we can get our first nail upgrade. The first of many. And so for Bob, this nail upgrade is going to eventually be useful for Kahlo, but also going to be useful for Nosk. For Alice, we're going to be heading to Sanctum. And this nail upgrade will actually be useful there as well for the Soulmaster fight. So, in order to get up to Sanctum, we're going to have to go through the DLC rooms. The reason we do is because we're emulating the later patch 1432 rather than patch 1221 this was made on. I wanted to do a run that wasn't based off of Walkling storage, and so this run is basically using the latest patch rule set, which doesn't allow walking storage, and where it works differently anyways. Fun little dodge there. Didn't have to move, just he missed. But yeah, so normally you wouldn't have to go through those rooms on patch 121. Also, we could have hit that grub through the floor on patch 1221 normally. So we're doing a couple things slightly inefficiently, specifically to emulate the later patch. Likewise here, we could have done a lever skip on patch 1221. But that's okay. It's a little more fun going through the movement here. Sanctum is an awful, awful place. The enemies in here are very unpredictable, which is okay if you're TAS, though. You can just reroll reality if you never like where they are. Like in this room, they spawned in a very bad place the first time through, so I just did a small RNG manipulation by putting a nail hit somewhere, and that caused the room to roll differently, and then the enemies didn't appear in a bad place. If you think about comparing that to how human runs go, it's basically the equivalent of running multiple times until you get lucky. The thing is, with TAS, it can consistently get lucky, because it could just keep rolling RNG until it gets what you want. There are some limits to that. I mean, you're never going to get it perfect. We did an early control there, using the spikes to get control so we can line up our nail hits faster. And now we're just doing our nail hits as much on cooldown as we can. There was a little bit of downtime there, because he teleported pretty far away, but that was the best that I could find. This guy is very tricky to manipulate to get his teleports where you want them to go. He literally tries to move as far away from you as he can, and so it does get tricky. The second phase is going to be pretty quick. We just bully in the corner over here. Yeah, Nail and Fury makes the fight pretty fast. So one thing I'd like to mention coming up here is that this room takes advantage of a trick called fake dive. And so when you fake dive, you can basically break the platform without passing through it. And unfortunately on this patch, they're inconsistent. So we're going to do a combination of fake dives and non-fake dives, which even with TAS, I can't get to be consistent. So that was a fake dive, it broke. But here we're going to do an actual dive. We healed there because we need that health to be able to pogo these enemies. They would have died if we hadn't healed there because we have Fury. But that was pretty quick, so we pogoed up, grabbed grub, and now we're out. Gotta love Dashmaster. Then we can take the shortcut out here. This guy's already dead, thankfully. We managed to dodge that elevator on the way down. Grab a little extra soul, because what we're going to do up here is we need to open this secret passage, and we're going to use dive to do it. If you time that just perfectly, you can dive and still have time to dash off the elevator. Long, exciting room. Another exciting room. This part's interesting, at least. We get to do a mixture of trans dashes, which is dashes where you dash, hit the wall, and then dash backwards off of it. And then just normal wall jumps there. So we're going to need this stag later when we come back to the Nailsmith after completing the grubs. And we're also going to use this to get out, because now Bob at this point has completed a few things, and we also have dive now, which means Alice is now able to head to Crystal Peak. So before we head up, we're going to take care of a few grubs that we missed in this area. Now that we have Dash and Dash Master, they're much faster. So we're going to grab this spike grub. And then you can use the hazard respawn to get out faster. And then there's a grub here. We were able to use the dive to kill one of the aspids, so that we're able to get in pretty efficiently. You can actually start dashing before the gate opens, and therefore your dash will end at the perfect time to jump up. Now we're going to do this guarded grub. The guarded grub, it is possible to dash over this guy, but it's pretty precise. It's very easy to get hit there. Use down dashes where we can. I love down dashes. They're one of my favorite pieces of tech in this game. So we're heading up here. We're going to do Pogax. A little bit of an awkward Pogax, but it worked. So we need to get this grub. We can't hit it through the floor, so we're going to go around. Another trick with the dash through the gate. This room's fun. Getting the timing right in this room is tricky. The lasers are actually slightly RNG. So you have to get lucky as well as having good timing. And then we can get this with a quick little background pogo. Perfect timing on the early control. If that hits you too early, you won't actually pick it up, so you need to manipulate reality so that you get there exactly at the right moment. Now we're going to fight Crystal Guardian. And the main reason we're doing this is that we need this bench. We're going to have to do a couple of different things in Crystal Peak, and using this as a central bench turned out to be a very convenient way to do that. There's another way you could do a second pass through Crystal Peak, which is to come in from the Dirtmouth side. But in order to do that, you need to have wings, and this run does not get wings. So we're just going to use the CG bench instead as our reference. So we're not going to do Crown. What we would rather do is get Crystal Dash as soon as possible, because that's going to speed things up a little bit. And the timing is also going to work out nicely, because while this is going on, Bob is busy doing colos. So we really want to get Bob some upgrades here. So the first upgrade we're going to be trying to get is going to be Descending Dark, which is always useful. So once we get the C-Dash here, we'll be able to continue onwards towards Descending Dark. We do grab a couple grubs on the way, of course. Crystal Peak is a very grub-dense area, so any run that's going to be getting grubs is going to be coming here at some point. We can get a C-Dash through that cycle there. And on this patch, that lever does not turn off the pressure, so we have to go through the gate. Crusher cycles are very annoying. Not much you can do about it, though. Another grub. And now we're going to go through the one dark room that Alice has to do. Thankfully, it's a pretty easy dark room. Well, at least for TAS. It's a little bit trickier when you're doing this as a runner. There are setups in there, but they can be tricky. So at this point, Bob is basically getting to about halfway through colos. And so we're going to get D-Dark just in time. So this buggy, normally we'd use this buggy to do a skip, where we can get early control in the Descending Dark. Unfortunately, on this patch, the buggy kills itself when you go over towards the grub. Normally going over towards the grub actually helps lure it, and we can get hit out of the animation here. But we can't do that, unfortunately. So instead, we're just going to have to wait through this whole animation. But the timing works out pretty well for Bob, because we're getting D-Dark right as Bob is in a kind of a critical point in the first Kalos. So now that we have D-Dark, we're going to head down to Resting Grounds. We're going to try to get the Seer Ore, because we need that ore for the nail upgrade. And so first we're going to fight Zero. So Bob actually killed Galian on Bob's route, and so Zero will give us the rest of the essence we need to be able to get the Seer Ore. Pretty straightforward fight. D-Dark kills things quickly. So this part of the route's kind of interesting. We're going to get the ore, and now what we would like to do is we would actually like to get Nail 3 before Bob is done with Kalos, because Kalos takes a very long time. They end up being kind of one of the gating parts of this run, and so any upgrades we can get Bob to speed up Kalos is going to help. So we're going to go ahead and take a roundabout path to City here. We're going to grab the grub that is in Crypts here. And then now that we've got that grub, we're going to head down to City. So this is where we could have picked up that grub on the side in City that is near King Station. But we got it earlier just because it was convenient with the timing. So we head through here. Pogo off things. Pogo that one upwards, or not pogo it, but hit it upwards and then dash underneath it. So now we're going to get the guarded grub here. This dies much faster with D-Dark than it dies with just nail hits. Unfortunately, we can't C-dash immediately because there's stuff in the way, but now we can C-dash from here. We stay just slightly ahead of their hitboxes so they can't hit us. So we're going to be taking the upper path to get to Lem. The lower path ends up being a little bit awkward, and we need a grub up here. Normally this grub is a little bit out of the way, you wouldn't want to get it, but because we have to skip some of the winged scrubs, this ends up actually being one of the better grubs for us to get. And of course we did this little section because we're being good and pretending we're on later patch. Otherwise you just do a lever skip there. So here's the grub. Again, D-Dark makes short work of the enemy. We're also getting a little bit of Geo here, and the Geo that we get in here, as well as the Kalo 1 Geo, is what's going to help pay for the Nail 3 upgrade, as well as selling the Lem. The nice thing is that this is the last time we'll need to sell the Lem. Well, only time technically. We're able to dodge that elevator. Because we're going to get enough Geo from Kalo 2 to pay off the rest of Nail 4. We actually will end up with some additional relics at the end of the run just for free from grub rewards. But we don't actually care about that. This is a funny little segment. Originally I tried to C-dash through there, but the Jennifer kept hitting me. So I ended up just deciding to do a dash through instead. Technically that's a little bit of an error. I could have C-dashed from a little bit higher up. And I do that later when I do the C-dash through this room. I didn't really check properly the first time through. Must have been tired. But yeah, we're going to get Nail 3. And Nail 3 is going to help Bob quite a bit, because Bob is in the middle of Colo 3, or Colo 2. And unfortunately, the enemies in there, especially the flying enemies, are really painful if you're only on Nail 1 Fury. And I'll talk more about that later in Bob's video. Okay. Yeah, and so this is back to that Crystal Guardian bench that we took earlier. So first off, we're going to do Crown. And Crown has a grub, and it also has another ore. Thankfully, we can use the background pogo. We don't need wings. There's a nice little C-dash here. Gets across the whole room. We use the ceiling to slow us down a little. And we can get C-dashes through here. The positioning on that's very tight, very important. Now here, we can't do the regular trick up because we don't have wings. However, we can use a series of background object pogos and enemy pogos to get up there. So it saves us a little bit of time. We don't have to go all the way across the room. And now it's just another series of background pogos and wall jumps to get through here. This is a little bit awkward here. Normally when you're doing this skip you would have wings. So we just have to do it with all pogos. But it's not too bad. That C-dash is a little iffy. It just barely saves time. Okay. And now we're going to ultimately head towards Grubfather. And we're going to do that by way of the dirt path exit here. And this is a very convenient exit to use because there's also a grub that we can grab here. And this gives us the last of the grubs that Alice is going to get. Of course, first there's this mimic. Alice frees the mimic as well, just for fun. The timing on the elevator opening is very convenient. Happens to line up with C-dash pretty well. We're going to grab this bench, because we're going to need to quit out here after Grubfather. Meanwhile, Bob is actually opening the stag station for Alice to come back to later. And so now we have the very long and fun waiting for Grubfather to throw things at you section. Unfortunately, there's no way to speed this up. What we're doing in this duo run that helps a little bit is that Bob is actually still collecting grubs while Alice is doing this. In particular, Bob is taking care of the green path grubs. Normally you would have to get all the grubs and then you would have to come here and then wait for a few minutes, getting all the rewards. So the parallelism here is actually quite useful. We collect some Geo. We get more than enough Geo from this, so we don't even need all of it, but we grab what we can. It's 31 grubs, so it takes a while to get all the rewards. And then now, Alice is going to C-dash out. That's because there were a couple of grubs that Bob picked up, and so now we can reset, and we can get those grubs. We don't actually need this Geo, so we're just going to skip most of it. And now Alice has to wait a bit. If I was to do this over again, one small change that I would make to the routing is the grub that's by the Vengefly off of this room on the right. The Vengefly Pogo grub. That one I would have gotten with Alice right there while I was waiting, instead of having Bob grab it on the way down. And that, I think, would have saved a little bit of time and made things sync up a little bit better. But by the time I realized that, it was so late into the run that redoing it would be painful. So I decided it wasn't worth it for that tiny time save. So now all the grubs are done. We've got the last pale ore. And so Alice is going to get the nail upgrade. This movement's kind of fun. There's a nice little inventory drop right there. Down dashes to get through faster. Down dash is actually technically slower than falling, just by a tiny bit. But it can still save time if you're doing it from a complete standstill. Or even up to a relatively high pre-jump velocity, you can still save time off of it. And yeah, Alice is going to get the final nail upgrade, which then will allow Bob to complete the run and have the happy couple. Yeah, this is the canonical ending, the final upgrade. Nothing else happens from here. Nobody dies. That's where it ends. Thank you everyone for watching. Hopefully this was interesting and gave you a little more insight into what happens in this strange little run. Bye.